Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Celtic Guardian deck profile. So this is a deck that I've wanted to build for a very long time. I am very excited to show you guys this deck because it's a very interesting deck. Now there's actually only 3 Celtic Guardians in the entire game, 3 different ones currently. So it's a very interesting build, I will say to you guys. It's super cool. I love the way that it actually turned out because it's actually very control based, which is super fun, and it can actually OTK your opponent out of nowhere. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out that Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test stands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Celtic Guardian. So Celtic Guardian is a awesome card. It only has 1400 attack and 1200 defense, and basically it's an elf that learned to wield a sword, which is kind of neat. He battles enemies with lightning swift attacks. He's a very interesting card because there's only like 3 different versions of him. We then play 3 copies of Celtic Guard of Noble Arms, which kind of ties him into the Noble Knight archetype. And it cannot attack while you have any cards in your hand, and then once per turn you can special summon a Celtic Guard monster from your hand, and then while this when attacking inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can draw cards equal to the number of Celtic Guard monsters you currently control, which is really good. It helps you draw in the deck to get you more cards. This card is basically based around this card. It has 2100 attack, which is really big, and it's just an overall awesome card. We then play 2 copies of Obnoxious Celtic Guardian. Obnoxious Celtic Guardian cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster that has 1900 or more attack, which is a pretty good effect just to be able to protect itself, which is a very small margin of monsters that can destroy this card. It has to have 13, 14, 15, basically anything that's 18 to 13 can destroy it while it's in defense position, and anything that has 15 to 18 can destroy it in attack position. So this card can live through a lot of attacks and a lot of different monsters. You have to hit that very narrow margin to actually get rid of this monster by battle. We then play 3 copies for the last 3 monsters, which is only a few monsters in this particular build because you're playing a lot of trap cards in this deck. Is 3 copies of Barrier Statue of the Drought. So this card is a very neat card that basically is one of the regular Barrier Statue cards, and it basically has the ability that your opponent cannot, and you cannot special summon anything but earth monsters. So you're basically locked into only playing these particular monsters in this particular deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Rhoda because all of your Celtic Guardian monsters are, warriors. We then play a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. Harpy's Feather Duster basically just board wipes your opponent's back row, so it's really helpful for this particular deck. 1 copy of Scapegoats. Scapegoats is really helpful in this deck too because it's a earth card that's going to be special summoned to your side of the field, so you can go to cards like Mrs. Radiant in the extra deck to boost up your Celtic Guardian monsters by just that little bit more that you might need. 2 copies of Double or Nothing. Double or Nothing is really good in this deck too because it helps you go into Utopia Double, which the only thing you have to keep in mind is when you have Drought on the field, you can't go into that card. But this card is basically just here to help you stop your opponent for a certain amount of time and then make it with a XZ monster that is Earth, like a Baguska or something like that, or link it away. And what this card basically does is lets you OTK your opponent by summoning Utopia Double. And once you summon Double, you'll search this card from the deck, make a copy of Utopia on top of the Double, and it will go to 5,000. And then you swing at the opponent, negate the attack, drop Double or Nothing, and then it will go to 10,000, and you swing for an OTK. We play 3 copies of Pot of Desires. I know this is very weird for me, but it actually works in a deck like this that's a control-based deck. You don't want to play all 3 of them in the same game, obviously, but you will probably banish at least one of them when you activate Pot of Desires, and hopefully you don't Desires into 2 Desires. That would really suck. But hey, it's still really a good card in this particular build because you're trying to dig through the deck to get all sorts of trap cards, which is the main way that the deck functions. And for the last 3 cards that we're going to be playing for the spell section, we're just playing 3 copies of Unexpected Die. The 3 Unexpected Die are basically just here to get your copies of your Celtic Guardians out of the deck and to actually bait Ash Blossoms, because this card is really good at helping you bait Ash Blossoms. You can actually activate this, and if you have any other normal summon in your hand besides Drought, you can basically make a Utopia Double going first, which is pretty good for this particular deck. And also it helps you get a monster on your side of the field in the form of Celtic Guardian. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're playing a bunch of traps in this build. So we're going to open up with 3 copies of Dogmatic Punishment. Dogmatic Punishment lets you send a monster from your extract to the graveyard, and then you get to target a monster on the field, or you get to destroy a monster on the field that has lower attack than the monster that you sent, which is pretty good. It's really a good card to be able to just target a monster or target a face of monster your opponent controls, and then you get to send a monster with equal or higher attack from your extract to the graveyard, and then you get to pop that monster. Especially sending stuff like your Skull Warrior from your extra deck to the graveyard is just really nice, or your Elder Entity Nist to be able to get you a double pop is just super nice. For this particular deck, you play 3 copies of Storming Mirror Force, because Storming Mirror Force just is going to help you stop your opponent from doing damage to you and destroying your monsters. This card comes in really handy, especially where you have Drought on the field and you want to protect it. We play 3 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. Compulse is really good in the deck too, because Compulse basically just bounces monsters from your opponent's side of the field back to their hand. 3 copies of Crackdown. Crackdown is super nice too, because it lets you take an opponent's monster, which is super nice. To activate this card by targeting a face-up monster opponent controls, take control of that monster, and while you control that monster, it can't attack or activate its effects. And then while that monster leaves the field, you destroy this card, which is pretty good just to be able to basically use as link material. It's super helpful to go into other cards with this particular card and just stop your opponent. I play 3 copies of Solemn Strike as well. Solemn Strike is basically here to stop summons, so it's a really great card just to give me additional stopping power in this deck. And then I play 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment basically you pay half your life points and you negate the summon of a monster or a spell or trap activation, which is pretty good to be able to just stop something. I really like playing the 3 each of this in this particular deck. It works out really, really well. So that's it for the main deck, guys. I know it's a very simple main deck, but it works well. It actually works really well. It's a very simplistic deck. So let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Baguska. Baguska is an Earth monster, so look out for Earth monsters, because that's going to be the main cards that you're going to be summoning in this deck. And if there is any Earth monsters that you don't see that you want to play, you can throw them in here, because the extra deck is basically a toolbox for you to use for different monsters to throw against your opponent. So Baguska has the ability that once per turn during your standby phase, you detach a material from this card, and if you cannot, you destroy this card. And then if this card is in attack position, it gains different effects depending on the battle position that it's in. If it's in attack position, it can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and your opponent cannot target this card, this attack position card with card effects either. And then when it's in face-up defense position, which is the really good effect, you change all face-up monsters in the field to defense position and negate the activated effects of monsters that were in defense position when this effect activated, which is pretty good just to be able to basically shut your opponent down from attacking you. It's a really good effect to be able to also negate stuff, so it's a really good card. Play a single copy of Utopia Double. It is a light monster, so you can't OTK your opponent if you have Drought on the field, but it's still pretty good to be able to summon a copy of each of the Celtic Guardians or crack down an opponent's level 4 monster to be able to OTK them. 1 copy of Utopia to throw on top of it, and if we do banish with Desires both copies, which I have never actually banished both copies, but you can do it sometimes, banish both copies of Double or Nothing. With Desires, I do play a single copy of Utopia the Lightning, so this card does come in handy to be able to throw on top of a copy of Utopia to do a 5,000 attack where your opponent can't activate anything. We play a single copy of Access Code. Access Code is a card that basically is just here to be able to pop cards against your opponent. You don't summon it all that often, so you can drop it for another XZ monster that you want, like a Gaga Cowboy, which is an option for you guys, or even a Zubaba General if you want to play that in here. We play a single copy of the Draco Masters of the Tinny. Draco Masters of the Tinny is kind of neat because it works with normal monsters. It can't be destroyed by battle with an effect monster, and if you control no effect monsters, you can destroy effect monster opponent controls up to the number of non-effect monsters you currently control or in your graveyard, which is pretty good to be able to just pop cards by having Celtic Guardian, the old school Celtic Guardian on the field or in the graveyard. 1 copy of Unicorn to spin stuff, Phoenix to pop spells and traps, and Cerberus is actually an Earth monster, so you can pop monsters with this card pretty easily in this deck. This card is always live, which is pretty good. 1 copy of Pentastag, because Pentastag helps you do piercing damage, which is really good. Mrs. Radiant, because this card is awesome to go in with Scapegoats, along with your IP Masquerade, because it can help you go into a copy of Access Code extremely easily in this deck. for awesome plays. We play a single copy of Link Spider, which is also really good because you can go into Link Spider first with the Celtic Guardian, and then be able to special summon a second Celtic Guardian from your hand to go into all sorts of really good plays. And then we play a single copy of Elder Entity Nist for the Dogmatica Punishment. This card gives you double pops, which is really good. And then the same copy of Fossil Warrior Skull Knight, which is Skull Knight is really good because it can banish it at any time. It doesn't have to be immediately after it hits the graveyard to banish this card to activate its effect, which is kind of nice compared to Nist. But at the same time, sometimes you just want to pop something right off the bat, and you need the 2500 instead of the 2400. So I played one of each. So that's it for the deck, guys. Again, very simplistic deck in what it's trying to do. It basically just uses the extra deck as a toolbox with a whole bunch of traps to use Celtic Guardian for a awesome card, awesome old school card to be able to summon out from your hand. Like, it's a really good card to just, like, surprise your opponent and go, wait a minute, you just summoned a Celtic Guardian against me? What are you playing? It's like Celtic Guardian Turbo, bro. What do you think? So it's a really awesome deck. I really love how nostalgic it was. I hope that we get some more Celtic Guardian support in the future, because this deck is super fun. I really would love to see how this deck evolves going forward because it's super cool. Like, maybe give it a clause in the text that it says this card is always treated as an elf monster as well, because it's actually called Elf Swordsman in the OCG, which would be really helpful to actually kind of make it an elf card, because then you get a lot more cards in the archetype. But anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next videos. See you later, guys.